This week on Inside the Headset, we are featuring Jarae Thurmond from Georgia Southern. Coach Thurmond reflects on his time in the Navy, his career progressing to a spot at Georgia Southern, and the impact the AFCA has had on his career and network. If you like this podcast, make sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch new episodes each week. Now, let's get inside the headset with Coach Thurmond.
Coach, what's happening, man? How are you?
What's going on, baby? I'm blessed, man. Thank you for reaching out.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I remember running to you a few years ago, and what did you tell me, man?
I told you at AFCA a couple years ago when I was a pup, just coaching at Sweetwater High School. I said, "Hey, I don't have a story quite yet, but I'm gonna have a story one day, and we're gonna get on this podcast."
Yeah, I saw your recent promotion, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Over there at Georgia Southern, and director of player and recruiting relations. And I know that there's some story in between Sweetwater and this, and there's some story before all this kind of stuff, Navy vet, all these good things, man. So we're going to dive into all this good stuff. But first, just love asking, when did you develop that itch to make this your profession? And, what is your football background like? Because once again, you're a little unique with your background. Just talk to us about your football experience and what got you the itch and gave you that itch to coach.
Absolutely, it's quite the unconventional path. But I was playing football out of high school here, Southwest DeKalb High School out of Decatur, Georgia. Decided I wanted to come to Georgia Southern. I was gonna walk on. Love to tell people I got a couple T-shirts. Didn't play, and I was playing semi-pro ball. And that's how I kind of landed into the coaching role, because I didn't have the talent to play so much, but I knew I had a thirst for teaching and developing. And that was kind of my niche. Joined the Navy, and I was still playing semi-pro ball while I was in the Navy. But I knew that as those playing days and these knees didn't hold up, it was time to kind of coach. And I got on out of high school, and the rest is kind of got me here.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, you brought up the fact that you spent some time in the Navy, U.S. Navy Lead Instructor in San Diego, California, from 2010 to 2022. There's basically some major differences between being in the military, being a coach, but there's also a lot of similarities.
Absolutely.
Talk to us a little bit about some of the similarities that you found as you've kind of crossed between the two professions, and then, time management. I mean, once again, military packs your day up. I know you have kids, you're playing semi-pro football, and then obviously getting into this coaching world, recruiting weekends, I guess every weekend now.
Absolutely.
Stuff going on all the time. Just talk about the two parallels between the two.
So my time in the Navy really prepared me for this position that I'm in right now. I tell the players all the time, Coach Thurmond at 36 is well more prepared to take this job than Coach Thurmond at 18 or 22. I was a bit irresponsible back in my days, and that's why I left Georgia Southern. Actually, my dad pulled me out of here just because I wasn't doing the right things. And it was important for me to get back and circle back. But the military taught me time management, as we talked about, which is very important. It taught me leadership and just life skills that I can pour back into these young men here.
And now, when you initially joined the Navy, was that kind of a, hey, you can't get right, you need to go get some structure type deal, or was that something maybe you were itching to do?
I was in ROTC back in high school, okay. And the Navy was always an option, but, I was chasing this dream to play football in the college level, and I wasn't quite ready to join the Navy. Like I said, my dad pulled me out of school. I got my associate's degree at a junior college back here in Atlanta, and it was just, I was at a stopgap, and I said, man, I got to do something to change my life and change my ways, or else I'll be stuck in a trap. And I joined the military. I was in the Navy for 12 years, medically retired. It's been a blessing. I was able to see the world and pour into these young men with experiences and places that I never thought I'd go.
Now, how did the semi-pro football kind of play into this whole deal? Been active military, plus basically beating yourself up on the weekends in football. How did that play out? How did you get into that?
Definitely a weekend warrior. I played here in Georgia for a couple years. My first duty station in the military was in Hawaii, so I played in the Hawaii Gridiron League, a couple teams out there for a couple of years, and that's when I realized that the ball was starting to go flat for me, and I was being more so a possession receiver than a speedster that could take it over the top. And I think I learned more in those experiences and just like telling those guys, teaching those guys, those younger guys, hey, with your skill set, you can utilize this, or let's craft this, let's work on this. So I became more a coach than a player. So by the time I got to California, that was my last couple of years of playing, and I got into coaching at a high school.
So let's kind of talk about that. What was that transition like? What happened for you to get on at Sweetwater? Who'd you call? Who called you? All that kind of stuff. Just talk to us about that transition.
Great question. So we were the semi-pro team that I was playing with. We were doing a lot of community service, and we went to a local high school. It happened to be Sweetwater High School, and they actually had their eyes on a different coach to come out and volunteer. But I knew that my football playing days were over, and coaching was definitely a passion of mine. I didn't see it to be a career later on, but I saw it as a passion. So I reached out to Irvin Hernandez, who's the head coach at Sweetwater High School. At the time, he was just a freshman high school coach. And I just say, hey, any capacity that I can come in and help, let me come in and be a wide receiver coach. My playing days are over. I am active duty Navy, but I'll give you all the time I got. He made sure to emphasize to me that it was a non-paid position.
Right.
I got that quite a bit, and I accepted that role, and later turned out to be the varsity running back coach just in time.
So, like I said, I'd love to turn, any of your experiences into learning opportunities for any coaches that might be in similar situations across the globe. And oftentimes guys fresh out of college, they worked in the professional world for a little bit, have been in the military, they get into coaching, and it's not quite the same thing as actually playing, right? It's a lot of differences. What was your biggest, I guess, gap in where you had to catch up and say, okay, this is what it takes to be a great coach? Or where do you think you were maybe? I don't want to use the term deficient, but I mean that's probably the proper word for it. But where were you lacking and had to improve at?
At the high school level, not necessarily much because I just became a student of the game. But as I transitioned here to college, I realized that there's much more that you need to put into it. And when I was a volunteer assistant here at Georgia Southern, I learned a lot from Coach Ryan Applin, Marcus Davis, guys of that sort. And it was a crash course.
Yeah, and I'm assuming it probably continues to be that as you're
absolutely
as you're a young coach, still trying to figure everything out. Now, what were you able to transfer from your naval experiences specifically to that high school group there in Sweetwater? What were some of the things that you went through or learned, or just life lessons that you were able to teach those young men?
Absolutely. So at Sweetwater High School, they're in San Diego, South Bay, San Diego. That school is not really well off. A lot of those young men don't even graduate high school. So the biggest goal that I had was to show them a male influence who actually cares and has time. I gave them my time. I gave them everything I could. Another position for me to get here at Georgia Southern was to show them that, hey, dream big and that it can happen. 5 years ago, I told a lot of people, I told everybody there, I said, hey, I'm going to be coaching college football one day. And there were some people who laughed at me and told me that that's not possible. Nobody goes from high school to D1. It just doesn't happen. And first of all, where's Georgia Southern? I was dealing with a lot of San Diego people. And those kids believed in me. And, just as much as I pour into them, they poured into me. And I had to make sure that for myself, as well as for those young men who are at Sweetwater, who I've coached, I still stay in contact with a lot of those players that, dream limitlessly.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. I love when I get to talking to coaches and, they're reminiscing on maybe the stuff that they poured into them, and it's almost every time you end up taking a lot more from them than, not necessarily what you gave to them, but you just end up walking away with a lot more than what you expect from those young people. And the easy question is for me to ask, hey man, your naval experiences, man, talk to them about that. But the tougher question, is you talked about your time at Georgia Southern and maybe being a knucklehead or finding yourself not making right decisions. Especially when you go to situations like that where, some of those kids aren't making great decisions. How were you able to take those experiences, some of those negative experiences that you had and grown from, and able to pour it into those young people?
I think every day I'm a living testament. I'm a living testimony that, you can turn things around, and it's never too late. Luckily, I didn't get into too much trouble, but I was along a path that was not glorious or to be, celebrated. Mm-hmm. So now every day that I'm here on campus is just a living testimony. And I pour into these young men every day with the experiences, whether it be from the Navy or before the Navy.
Yeah, I know a lot of times those guys can sometimes they can relate a little bit more when they realize that, dang, he was just like me, some of the decisions you made, and able to see the success that you're able to provide. So now, just kind of getting back into the football aspect, this is where I know this story gets super interesting. You're telling everybody around you, I'm going to be a FBS coach. You're still active in the military. You're in this volunteer role here at Sweetwater, California. Just talk about your plan and how you executed it initially to get kind of in the door at Georgia Southern.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's a story that I enjoy telling all the time because, like I said, that limitless goals and just not allowing someone to tell you no, and just having perseverance and betting on yourself. It started on a whim. I always had love for Georgia Southern. This was my first love. This is my dream job. But I reached out to the athletic director on Twitter on a whim. Now, I'm new on Twitter, and I reach out to Jared Banco, and I just say, hey, I don't want anything from you. Just if I can have the opportunity to come sit with you, just so I can learn. I'm active duty Navy. If I could just sit with you, it'd be great. He said he responded first, and that was amazing. Yeah. And I flew out to Atlanta. That's where my parents stay. I got in my dad's truck, drove 3 hours here in this Georgia heat, and I changed in the back. I changed in the back of my dad's truck into a suit and a tie, the whole nines. And I walked in there and I had an interview, which I didn't know would be an interview, but an interview to be a mentor. And Jared Manko sat down with me and he said, you know what? I love your story. If there's anything that I can do to help you out, I will. We left that, and I thought that was the greatest thing in the world for me. A year later, I'm getting ready to transition out the military, and I call him up and I say, hey, Mr. Banko, how you doing? I'd love to come see you again just to catch you up on things. And he said, well, we could just Zoom or FaceTime. And I said, no, I really feel like I need to be in your face. And that's me betting on myself. Just something in my soul called for me to really go see him. And I got back in my dad's truck. Well, he gave me a condition. He said, you can come see me, just don't wear a suit this time. So I did not wear a suit, but I definitely had a polo and slacks on. And I go and I meet him, and he says, you know what, hold on one second. He picks up his phone. He calls Clay Helton, who's the newly hired head coach here at Georgia Southern at the time. And next thing I know, 5 minutes later, I'm sitting in front of Coach Clay Helton with an interview, and I just told him my story from my military experience and my goals and what I wanted to do. And I told him I didn't need anything. Just give me an opportunity to come in the door, and if I need to be a coffee maker, I'll be the best doggone coffee maker in the building. And I retired from the military, came in, Coach Helton held his word. I was out the military May 26th, and June 6th, I was here for my first day of work as a volunteer assistant with Coach Ryan Applin. So I was assistant tight end coach. Okay. And they took me off of coffee the first day because I guess I didn't make it that well. But I created value.
I thought you said you're going to be the best coffee maker, man. You got fired the first day. Yeah, man, that's awesome, man. That's a fantastic story, man. And I tell you what's so awesome about it is a lot of people listening, whether you've been coaching for a while or you're trying to find your way to kind of kick through the door in the profession, they've all heard the advice, right? Hey, just reach out to a bunch of people. All you need is that one yes. Well, you did it, right? I mean, you reached out, you got that one opportunity, you made the best of it, and then I've heard the advice like, hey man, just show up, don't worry about the pay, just volunteer, go do camps, go do all this kind of stuff, and you did it. And I don't know what your financial situation was or anything like that, but you bet on yourself and you went out there and did it.
Coach, I'll tell you, there were weekends where I had maybe $12 in my pocket, but I realized that if I created value, things would come. So I saw a pocket. I saw in recruiting, hey, if we had these recruiting visits and I do really well at recruiting and I tell my story to these parents and stuff, I can come to these official visits, to these dinners and things of that sort. So I grinded out and
right.
I got meals. I got meals from going to these recruiting dinners. And little did I know that in my story and testimony and talking to these parents and talking to these prospective student athletes and me just trying to get a meal, I got a full-time job from that. And Coach Helton saw tremendous value in me, and that's how I got the role of, well, he came to me after the season and said, hey, you're too valuable for me to have you in this building for free. And I'd like to bring you on full-time and give you a director position. So I'm the director of player recruiting relations here. Just my relationship with the players, and then in recruiting, it was create value. That's Brian Ellis, Coach Brian Ellis, the offensive coordinator here at Georgia Southern, told me create value.
Yeah,
that's what I came in doing.
Yeah, that's exactly what you have to do. Now, just real quick, I know you kind of basically told us what Coach Helton said, but I'd love for you to maybe just kind of dive into what that promotion, that situation where you're sitting there with Coach Helton, he calls you into the office. You probably worried a little bit, wondering what he's about to talk about, and just talk to us a little bit about the conversation. You don't got to get into specifics, but a little bit more into kind of what he saw in you and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. So I was heading out the building one day, and I was prepared to come back another season and volunteer again, do whatever I needed to do and make it happen. And Coach Helton came to me and he said, Coach Thurmond, I need you to come into my office tomorrow morning. And here I am all night just stressing and like, oh my goodness, what did I do? I hope I did well. I hope he wants to retain me as a volunteer. And called my mom. We prayed, and I was worried. I hardly slept that night. Woke up first thing in the morning. I go to see him. He had some press availability that he had to do, so of course it made me wait a little bit longer. But he definitely kept his word, made time for me. He sat me in his office. First thing he said to me, he says, "You are tremendously vital to this university. You are family. You've been here, and your journey back is monumental, and all these young men love you in the building. All the players, you have an outstanding relationship with them, and I just want to make sure that you are fairly compensated for all the work and what you do for this university." I'm getting all choked up and teary-eyed now. My bad. It's just a tremendous story. It ties back to all those kids at Sweetwater that I told, hey, you can do whatever you want to do and don't let anybody limit you. And he offered me the full-time position. I told him I'd sign it in blood if I needed to right then and there. He said, hold on, let's get the contract drawn up and everything. Yeah. But I was all in. Georgia Southern's dream job, and not too many people get to, start out at their dream job. So I'm tremendously blessed and thankful for everything and everyone who I've encountered. I've got some tremendous mentors along the way that are still in the building. Yeah. Coach B.J. Johnson, a wide receiver coach, he went to Georgia Southern. It's just a big family environment. Like, we're bringing back a lot of former players to come back and coach, and then just former walk-ons that didn't quite make it either to go back.
Yeah, man. Well, it sounds like you guys are building something special over there, man. And yeah, man, that's awesome for you. I mean, like I said, I vividly remember you coming up to me and telling me you're going to make a story, man, and you won the spot on the podcast, and you definitely earned, your job, the spot on the podcast, and much more that's coming your way. But
thank you so much.
kind of wrapping all that kind of stuff up. There are a lot of people in this industry that want to make a jump. Whether it's from being a coordinator to being a head ball coach, from being maybe college to high school or high school to college, or maybe to the professional level. For anybody that's kind of aspiring to maybe make a movement that is far-fetched, one of those things that are might not be easily attained. What advice would you give them? What inspiration would you give them to kind of move forward and push for that?
So there's a quote that I learned in the military from a leader of mine who we always butted heads, but you seem to learn the most from those who you don't always agree with. He said, "There's no growth in the comfort zone. There's no comfort in the growth zone." So to be extraordinary, you have to do extra. So you got to bet on yourself. That is my number one thing. Bet on yourself and create value. You don't allow anyone to tell you no in these situations when you got everything on the line. Obviously, it's not necessarily feasible for everybody to just throw away their 9 to 5 and come out and volunteer and stuff. But there's a little sacrifice involved. But everybody's story is different. Me being a father, being a vet, and make sure I had to make my appointments, but I also had to be in here to make cut-ups because I got to be Coach Applin's right-hand man. And luckily, I was able to balance all these things. Just know that everybody's story is unconventional, but it can happen and, make it work.
Well, I appreciate you saying that because that's been probably the most rewarding thing for me with this podcast, doing it now for 5 years. You hop on with everybody, and I mean, there's not one cookie cutter story. And in a lot of other professions, obviously everybody's slightly different. But I went to school for 4 years. I went to med school for 4. I did my this, and then all of a sudden now I'm a doctor. It just doesn't vary off that too much. But when you start talking about this profession, man, it's just guys from all walks of life. Just from everywhere that's able to kind of bring a different perspective. So that's why I fell in love with the podcast, and I appreciate you kind of adding value to our podcast as well. Now, last thing before I let you go here, I've seen you at every convention, whether I run into you or you come and run into me, man. We talk maybe every year for the last 3 or 4 years or so, and I know it's important to you, just because you're there, been a younger guy, You're sitting inside of the buzz sessions. I mean, you're at the skills and drills field. You are shaking hands. You're networking. How do you anticipate just continuing to get more involved in the AFCA, and what has the AFCA meant to you?
AFCA has meant everything to me. I've made so many tight bonds with coaches across the country, a wide range. I mean, I can remember 5 years ago listening to your podcast with Chili Davis on there, and then actually going and meeting Coach Chili Davis and just letting them know, or be a Brendan Marion, and just everybody being so accessible and willing to help out. I will always be a part of AFCA. It's just super important to me. I'm going to sit in those buzz sessions with Coach Winston October, or who's taking me on as a mentor, or, a Brendan Marion, just the access that AFCA gives on top of the library. Because I was definitely in the AFCA library when I was trying to be a DB coach and had no DB experience. So I'm just so thankful for everything AFCA does. And I want to make sure I give you your flowers for hosting this podcast, and being accessible at those conventions. Because, I mean, everybody comes up to you, but you didn't have to take the time, and you took the time to talk to me and treated me with respect. And I'm always going to be grateful for you for that.
No doubt, man. Well, I appreciate that, man. And, before I let you go, definitely want to get the opportunity to kind of shout out your social media handles, anything like that you want to plug in here, so people can keep up with your journey, because I know the best is yet to come, and it'll be plenty more to add to it.
Of course, and if there's any way that I can help anybody out, I mean, I know everybody ends a podcast like this. I'll try my hardest to reach out and get on the phone when I have the opportunity, but you can reach out to me at Coach Thurmond 87, so that's THURMOND, Coach Thurmond 87 on Twitter, and I look forward to any and everyone who comes about. Thank you so much for just giving me this opportunity to tell my story. I know we we talked about it, and it's actually here. It's like a career goal of mine, but the story's not done yet.
Amen, man. Well, we'll make sure to link that in the show notes so everybody can easily find you. And once again, man, appreciate your service, what you do for our young people, and I definitely appreciate our relationship, man. Best of luck to you, and we'll see you in Nashville. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, Coach.
All right, man. Have a good one.
All right.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Inside the Headset. If you heard anything on this episode that you would like to learn more information about, head over to afcapodcast.com, where you can find every episode and all of the corresponding show notes. While you're there, take a second to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for the show, please let us know by sending an email to podcast@afca.com. Make sure to follow the podcast on Twitter @InsideTheHeadset and tag it when you share each episode. You can stay up to date with all things AFCA by following the @WeAreAFCA Twitter account. Every episode of Inside the Headset can also be found on your favorite audio streaming platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. If you are not currently a member of the AFCA, be sure to find us online at afca.com and apply to join over 10,000 NFL, college, and high school coaches from around the country who are striving to be the best they can be. With an AFCA membership, you gain invaluable access to the annual AFCA convention, the bi-monthly magazine, and the new and improved digital library, which contains thousands of videos and articles contributed by hundreds of current and former football coaches. You can also visit afcainsider.com to sign up for our free weekly email newsletter on the right-hand side of the screen. It comes out every Tuesday at lunch and is filled with great articles and stories written by many of the same coaches you hear on the podcast. It's geared to help you become a better coach tomorrow than you are today. Be sure to connect with me on Twitter @CoachMarioPrice, and remember, the AFCA is not just an annual convention. It is an association that continually promotes education, guidance, and networking. But it is also so much more than that. The AFCA is about celebrating the past and educating the future. It is about developing great coaches who will produce great teams and even better people. So invest in your skill set and impact today by engaging with the AFCA.